I wrote this beautiful book, Woman in Red, Magdalene Speaks. I spent maybe 25 years researching history to figure out all the lost pieces of the puzzle of Jesus's life that seem to have been scattered and spread out into rumors and propagandas and fake news. So I wanted to bring together all of the lost pieces for the benefit of all of us so that we are no longer illusioned by the lies that we are fed. This is the first chapter of my book. It's referred to as a novel, yet it consists of real historical figures who you will meet within the following pages. Many of the situations they face are not fictitious, while some have been elaborated upon for your reading pleasure. This is not like an ordinary novel, for this book has been written with the intention of giving its readers an opportunity to receive confidential instructions which convey many solutions to the problems of life. Today, humankind suffers more than ever despite our so-called progress. Therefore, wrapped inside this epic, fictional, historical book, you will find many practical remedies which cast new light on the meaning of inward contemplation. Illumining the struggles in our search for freedom from suffering, here presented are the formulas of saints of old. This is not a religious book, but a book written for your ultimate lasting benefit. No one can attain total peace through worldly endeavors alone. Therefore, I implore you to read and absorb yourself in the guiding light of truth, which, like an ocean of compassion, is presented here to dispel the darkness and lamentation in the world. Using the profound language of the soul, Woman in Red, Magdalene Speaks, overflows with esoteric secrets, mysterious scandals, and prophecies, all of which take our messianic heroes, Mary Magdalene and Jesus, into the depths of the uncharted inner realms. Evidence revealed to me secrets which were aching to be told, and so my debut historical novel, Woman in Red, Magdalene Speaks, has been conceived, nourished, and birthed by grace. Writing this book has been a 25-year quest into a search for the truth, as well as a ceremonial healing for me, as I pray it will be for you upon reading it. My most ardent prayer, and the prayer of my spiritual forefathers before me, is that all faithful seekers who desire to rise above the fickle tides of this world shall be led to their spiritual aim and object. Everything that needed to be said has now been expressed. On behalf of my Guru Parampara, I bless you. Chapter 1. Sacrifice. To sacrifice means to surrender something of value to gain something of greater value. It is finished, I heard him say. His head and body went limp. Death was upon him. A motionless silence wove its wicked web, devouring me in limitless regret. I trembled, his vacant eyes staring at me from behind such untold sorrow. Falling to my knees, weak with grief, I rocked back and forth, swooning, my voice choked with tears. I had no power to change the course of destiny's bitter wheel. Thus, I bore witness to circumstances I had been warned would come to pass. My world crumbled in those darkest of hours. Time slowed. My heart was broken for all to see. I wanted nothing more than for the pain to end, though I knew there would be no escape from it. Mournfulness bequeathed a cross, which I would now bear until I breathed my last, for my love was gone. The wailing women on the hill behind us began their somber cries, perfectly expressing this most awful juncture of predetermined fate. Despair left me gulping for air. I was entirely overwhelmed. Ashen-faced, Uncle Joseph and the Mary helped me to my feet. my rounded belly now a stark reminder of my woeful situation, a child without a father, a wife without a husband, a disciple without a master. I would within 1 year be married off to my husband's closest male relative, passed like a cup, a possession, not a free woman. I had loved Jesu for as long as I had breath in my body. He had been my friend and my teacher from the first moment that our eyes met. All that I held sacred was in him. Frozen, with his mother by my side, we huddled together, holding on to one another as we wept our bitter tears shared in grief. Her grip on my arm was tight, terrified. The Mary wished more than anything to squeeze out her own life airs to give birth to her son, my husband. Groaning, she beat her breast hard with her left fist. She had once nurtured her son from that same breast, yet now it was agonizingly dry and empty, like her son, who now hung limp upon the cross before her. The wind whirled about us like a mighty requiem, a bitter darkness descending on those who remained. We were united in our mourning on that hill of ruin that day. Our terror-struck family, pale and grey, felt something awful stirring in the air. We were transfixed, sombre, side by side, witnessing a most sorrowful nature of the monumental kind. We would never again be the same. Memories of those grotesque and twisted moments brought about by the hands of vulgar men would forever torment me. Theirs was a fool's paradise. It had been commercial interest alone which had driven their evil-mindedness to this. Despite their insidious displays of religious grandeur, I was certain that their future was ill-omened, though it would be my grief which would eventually drive them to their own self-destruction. I had heard about the dark Roman ritual of crucifixion from the women in the village, who had lost family and friends to the Roman thirst for order, but I had never witnessed one myself. Now I remembered their stories and shared in their anguish. I didn't know it then, but it was to be the beginning of what would become a life dedicated to the eventual ruin of all those who have cause for such vileness. Neither they nor I could ever have known that one day my name would go on to be a force to be reckoned with. From this life to the next, long into the future, I vowed that those who are corrupt would fear my name, Mary Magdalene, for I am Mary. Celestial choirs, harps and drums resounded in the air above us as the angels drenched us in their tears, mingling with our own. I think none of us were prepared for what had come to pass, for we were unable to contain the confusion. A bleak gloom settled on us as Jesu glanced in our direction with that all-knowing look which I had grown to understand. Now, as his anguished eyes closed for the last time in silent passing, a loud clap of thunder roared disapprovingly overhead. Uncle Joseph shouted commands to the Roman gods. "Bring him down!" he screamed. The wooden cross, such a cursed instrument, the ghastly device by which mankind enchained the bravest of men the earth ever did know. In the recesses of my spirit, I perceived the futility of it all. "It is time," he told them authoritatively. "On the orders of Pilate, it is time." Torrents of rain fell beneath the backdrop of the blackened afternoon sky as the guards seemed bewildered. In truth, they cared not whether this man lived nor died. They never wanted him dead to begin with. They were under orders, and orders must be obeyed. They knew from my uncle, from the council and the overlords of the Jewish kingdom, for he was a wealthy, well-connected man, highly respected by Jewish and Roman leaders alike. He was famous for his patient, wise counsel, as well as his generosity. It seemed as if the heavens had come to earth to collect the soul of their fallen soldier, for never had I seen such a storm. The soldiers moved quickly, as if they too sensed an impending doom. The taller of them took a spear in hand and climbed upon a ladder which leaned eerily against Jesu's cross. Reaching over, He thrust the sword forcibly into my husband's side. Uncle Joseph cried out, and within seconds the sun was no longer visible in the sky. We were engulfed in a blanket of heavy darkness, darker than the darkest night. I shuddered with dread. I regarded my uncle's astonishment as he buried his face in his hands, through which trickled despairing tears. "Get him down!" he thundered. Quickly, for fear of the gods, the soldiers began urgently cutting at the base of the wooden cross, bringing Jesu's lifeless body tumbling down to the ground. Startled, we shrieked, slipping in the mud as we ran to him. The downpour intensified, and in its deluge, any exhaustion I felt just washed away. Slicing the ropes with their sharpened knives, the men drew the dense iron nails from Jesu's feet and wrists. Blood oozed from his wounds, blood and water. I didn't think of it then, but years later I pondered on that one thing. If he were dead, how could blood and water still drain from him? Thank the Lord no one else had that same thought. The Mary and I reached for his slightly warm corpse, touching him despite the soldiers' obligatory shoves as they attempted to keep us away. We were consumed with an intense concentration and a singular need to see if he still lived. Jesu's head fell to one side as they lifted him onto a stretcher. He was without sign of life. Just as if the sun had disappeared from the sky, so too had Jesu left with it. No more shall I watch his chest rise and fall, I thought. Such is the prostrating power of death. How a simple thing like breathing in and out meant so much, yet had been relatively left unnoticed and underappreciated. Now it mattered more than anything, and in that moment I knew grief would come to be my constant companion. Some would claim Jesu was not so handsome to behold, but in my eyes and the eyes of those who knew him, he was so much more than that. The tenuous path was demonstratively sunless, making it difficult to see where we trod, but my uncle's self-assured footsteps guided us by the light of his devotion, while the Mary and I followed closely behind. Jesu's body lay disastrously still on the canvas stretcher, held between two long wooden poles. With shawls pulled tight over our heads, the wind and rain whipped at us from all sides. The ground, pulverized by the sudden change in weather, quickly became muddy, making it difficult for us to keep up. With each step I lost my footing on the slippery path as we made our way, entirely compelled by our joined grief. The wailing women could still be heard up on the hill. They had stayed, despite the profuse trembling and quaking of the elements which they endured for our sake. Their doleful prayers were soothing to my soul in a way that only a grieving widow could understand, for they perfectly expressed my torment and struggle. Never again would such a poignant moment as this be recorded in the stars, and their bitter cries seemed in some way to herald the significance of it. Funeral rites would instantly and in haste have to be completed before our holy night began at sundown. Shabbat, like a valiant friend, seemed to have come sooner than expected on this night. Praise the Lord for Shabbat, as I thought to myself, for without it we would not have been granted permission to bring Jesu down early. In fact, they would have left his tragic life ending there upon the cross, garishly displayed for all to see for at least 3 days whence. I thought of the wicked and miserly men of my faith, who, out of cowardliness and predisposed sinister deceptions, had demanded Jesu's execution by Roman hands. To them, he was nothing more than another deftly set aside false prophet. Mindful of the time restraint, we rushed gingerly through the storm. Death is the inevitable fate of us all, yet despite a lifetime of spiritual learning, nothing could have prepared me for a moment such as this. Grief crept in like a melancholy nightmare. I shivered, chilled by the violent upheaval of my sudden loss. The cold wind bit at my saturated dress as I wearily clung to the hand of Mary, who was determinedly eager to bury her son before sundown. A sudden break in the weather beamed a majestic light from behind the blackest of clouds, curiously interrupting the darkness just long enough for us to creep past a steep narrow down into the cavernous mouth of the crypt. In that moment, I considered myself to be a most unfortunate woman. A cock crowed. Funny how something that seemingly insignificant would later haunt me. Our child stirred in my womb, and shock, like a great malady, overcame me with weak-kneed heaviness as I gripped the Mary's arm to stop myself from falling. Frozen, we stood there a moment, silently reflecting on our uneasy assignment. Like the mouth of a giant serpent, the sepulchre would now take Jesu from us forever. Mariam, Providence demands that you now rise above your mournful misfortune, she said, clutching at me urgently. Your duty as his wife is to prepare my son for burial, so be strong for him and for us all. Promise me, she said insistently, promise me that as you lay him to rest, you will remind him of his mother who bathed and nurtured him when he was a child. I nodded in agreement, anxious and uncertain. Acknowledging my harrowed expression, she led me to the tomb while I, like a most unwilling prisoner of fate, obliged, nervously bustling past the guards, leaving behind a small crowd of gathered mourners, the wailers' distant, pitiful howls clinging to me, strengthening my resolve. The Mary turned away, rushing home before the Lord's Day began. Our family and faithful friends would no doubt be there to sing prayers, weeping for her deceased son, our dead leader. I was sick to my stomach. In the hope that a glimmer of life might yet remain, I, with a broken heart, pensively approached until I came upon Jesu's side. And there, on the cold burial slab, stained with blood, mud, and water, he lay. I reached for him, hopeful that I might feel his strong, affirming fingers wrap themselves around mine, reassuringly, as they had done so many times in the past. Anything to let me know he still lived, but nothing. Cold, unfeeling nothing. The vault's torches were lit, illuminating the otherwise soulless, dark, forbidding subterranean cave. Jesu's pallid corpse lay on a blood-stained stretcher. Hastily, my uncle withdrew the poles, which made a sharp, grating sound as they moved through the wet cloth. Something crept up on me in a slow, certain degree. The vault had an oppressive atmosphere which was dank and disproportionately sinister. Handing me a sponge and a bowl of floral water, my uncle said, I'm going outside to speak with Nicodemus. Listen, Mariam, you know what to do. I nodded nervously, watching as he walked away, leaving me quivering in terror. Unfortunately, yes, I knew what had to be done, and I grimaced. Like a bitter pill, this was a trial I did not wish to swallow. I could hear their voices outside, alone, I rooted to the floor, staring at Jesu's ashen, inanimate remains. The torch flames flickered restlessly on the extreme darkness, producing frightening shadows on the limestone walls which heaved and quivered in silent reverie. I knew undoubtedly in that moment that I was not alone. From behind my grim reality, a quiet strength now flowed into my bones like water to a dried-up flower. I loathed this power invested in me, for it would force me to do the unthinkable, bury my husband. The guards rolled the immense stone door closed after depositing 4 ceremonial jars at my feet one by one with a loud thud, rubbing salt into the wound of my mournful disorientation. Heal him, Maria, Uncle Joseph said urgently, his voice surprisingly still full of hope. What do you mean, heal him? He's dead, I stated uneasily as a fluttering of nerves moved through the pit of my stomach. The jars of frankincense, aloes and myrrh, he said breathlessly, moving to sit on the corner of a brooding chamber. Pausing to catch a breath, he said dejectedly, we failed to keep him safe, Maria. The stiff tone of his voice sent a cool shiver down my spine. I tried, but it was futile. I'm so sorry, Mariam. The opposition was just too strong. Slumping his shoulders, seemingly much aggrieved, he said, I am faint with faithless grief. I'm completely unsure of myself. These past few days, I admitted, have been too much to bear, I said broken-heartedly, as icy cold tears trickled down my withered face. My heart beat so hard in my chest that I was breathless with trepidation. I have faith in you, Mariam, he said confidently. You are strong. It is your sacred duty to minister to him in his hour of need. And since Shabbat is now soon upon us, be swift and do what must be done, he said nervously, shifting his feet in the dirt. I nodded, wiping the bounteous tears from my cheeks with my shawl, painfully aware of the uneasiness which now had dominion over me. Nervously, I peeled back the blood-soaked cloth from Jesu's body. Startled, my hands shook as methodically I had to remove the vines, twigs, and thorns which had in jest been made into a crown and wrapped tight around his head. I tugged at them, prizing them from flesh. Taunting him just a few hours before, the soldiers had made heedless mockery of Jesu, caring nothing for the pain that they inflicted on him. Ha ha, a king must now wear his crown, must he not? They teased, in their drunken cheer. With these same thorns had cut deep into my husband's sun-kissed skin, leaving him covered in a horrific amount of blood, which by law I was forbidden to wipe away from his body. Scripture dictated that a man's blood must be buried with him, therefore legally I could not bathe him as a wife would ordinarily do. Yet Jesu's body was so plentifully bestrewn with blood that I could scarcely see skin beneath the stains of his death. I knew not what to do. With my cold, wet clothes clinging to my limbs, I felt uncomfortably chilled to my bones. Shivering, teary-eyed, I handed the thorny crown to my uncle, asking, what am I to do? There's just too much blood. Wash him, Mariam. We make our own laws now, he said righteously, and I nodded in agreement, for what he said was true. It did not seem appropriate to bury such a great man as him in such a pitiful state, especially since his blood harbored the cruelty of the Roman regime. The whips had cut his flesh in countless places, and my fingertips with profound care removed the last of the bloody shrouds from his disfigured body. I shuddered seeing him so broken. His body was a silent testimony of incomprehensible human barbarity. Nevertheless, I was grateful to fill my mind with practical things which needed to be done, and soon I sensed a profound inner fearlessness. Rebelliously, I wiped him clean, breaking with all protocol of Judaic law, concentrating on my being rather than doing. My whole body vibrated mysteriously. I loosened the shields which protectively guarded my consciousness, and I fell into the silence of compassion. Putting my own needs aside, I tended Jesu's hands and feet, even though his injuries intimidated me, the uncivilized signs of his persecution. I shook, recalling the derision of the soldiers who knew not what they did. They were numb to it. To them, Jesu was just another victim of Judaic Roman rule, another fall guy to poke fun at, to make light of in their own pathetic bondage to human Roman order. Jesting had been their assumed means of coping with the parody of torture and murder to which they were privy. Morning, noon, and night the orders came in, day after day, week after week, year after year. Jesu was just another man to them, one of many to be crucified. By making light of what they did was to show off how unaffected they were, how Roman they were. As long as they were well compensated, they kept the appearance of strength, while their false pretenses gave them the reassurance that everything was fine. Again, theirs too was a fool's paradise. Those hours for me were devoid of any hope in humanity. endeavoring hard to rouse myself from my pitiful condition, awed and sickened by just how damaged Jesus' body was. I bathed him despairingly. It was shocking. His illustrious, heroic life, now desolate and ruined, taken from him in just a few moments of unnecessary brutality. With his death went away all of my bravery, for Jesus was the source of my soul's respite, as well as its inspiration. He was my rock and my best friend. An irrepressible panic suddenly overcame me, deftly pushing aside my newfound composure. Truthfully, I feared life without him. I speculated that I might live a half-life. I was now a widow, the mother of a child without a father, a disciple without a living master. Obediently, I poured water and oil over his head, as I had done when we were first married, combing through his knotted hair with my fingers. Fortunately, he looked peaceful, not anguished like a man who had been ridiculed, crucified, and scorned by his people. This would be the last time that I would with these hands touch him. I quivered at such a thought. My hair stood on end, as yet another wave of intense darkness hearkened at the thought of ever breaking from him. It was more than I could bear. He was too young to die, and I was too young to be widowed again. I wondered if this would make me a coward or a bitter monster. A tremor ran through my body. Every fibre of me ached with rigid exhaustion. For the sake of Jesus' good name, fate would necessitate that I became the hero of my own story. Moreover, I would be obligated to overcome all thoughts for myself, as our child would soon be born to me. Concentrating on the gentle hum of the ancestral prayers my uncle recited, fraught with emotion, I felt comforted and strengthened by them. Their low, definite presence relieved me. Following the lead of each ancient word, I refocused, washing every inch of blood from him methodically until he was spotless. Yet still his wounds oozed. So again I cleaned them until the blood slowed and eventually stopped. Then, with the fragrant charms of curative oils upon my fingertips, I anointed him to the doleful crooning of last rites. Despite being born of a stalwart Jewish aristocratic family, I did not believe nor behave as others did. The temples built as displays of wealth and power were to me bricks of lies. Outwardly, the priests and leaders spoke as the authority on all matters of faith, while privately they sinned. Not much was holy about them, for their extravagant shows of opulence had all but been acquired on the backs of others' hard work. Their demonstrations of learning meant that they were respected in society, yet secretly they were beyond doubt pleasure seekers. This had become the standard of the rich and powerful, while the common man had only the fantasy of one day living like them. Like an itch burning to be scratched, ambition and coin was the eagerness that they pursued, while God and righteous living was replaced by want of riches. This was no longer my faith. I knew it now more than ever. I felt like a stranger in my own homelands. My faith had been assuredly hijacked by criticism, animosity, and control. The old ways were fast becoming lost, and with it the simple life of godly devotion had been covered with prim fault-finding and the veneer of respectability. Reputation and honor mattered more than purity, truth, and devotion. Jesu had opened the people's eyes to such thing, and therefore he had become endangered, and he had endangered their positions as well as his own. The enchantment which was upon the people who faithfully, albeit blindly, followed, had fallen heavily over with them. With eyes fixated on their false masters, they feared any who might lift the veil of illusion which had held them beholden to untruth. They were ready to do battle, to stay secure in the indiscernible lies which they believed. They were ready to do battle, to stay secure in the discernible lies which they believed. I would carve for us a new path upon which all could walk, taking with me only the essence of our true faith. for money had fast become the new god, and position and power were more important than honesty and goodness. Jesu had been a heroic threat to their balance. He preached the evils of false leadership and taught his followers to live pure and simple lives, refraining from luxury and self-indulgence. In a society which was fast becoming a moral sinking ship, people like sheep herded one another to keep the norm of a false existence firm at any cost. And Jesu, a prince amongst men by blood, title, and birthright, was a paramount thorn in their illusory bubbles. To dare to defy the norm in any way meant potentially ostracizing oneself and one's family from an entire community. Often, imprisonment or even death was a very real possibility for any brave soul daring to rebel against society. It was not for the faint of heart to be gallant, as Jesu and John had been. But they had stood up fearlessly to the cultish mentalities which had infected our populace like a disease. By their bravery, the false spiritualists were left exposed. Jesu's assured disposition and authority had struck fear into the hearts of many, for by him these things had become glaringly apparent for all to see. He had smeared the other people's eyes with the healing balm of truth, and now many leaders' honor was suddenly in question. The priests and politicians were the pillars of our society, and Jesu had disturbed them. As a consequence, they had played a desperate game to hold the illusion firm over the sway of public opinion, calling him a dangerous rebel not to be trusted and an enemy of the people and the faith. The truth was, God had become big business. Faith was a powerful means of income and guaranteed a good lifestyle. It was not something that they were easily willing to let go of, not even for their expected Messiah. In fact, they feared him. They had feared his arrival so much that they executed any who claimed to be the one from whom God had anointed and sent to help them. To be dutiful to the spiritless mass agenda meant that one would have to give up freedom of forthright speech and even free thought, which were considered heretical by the brainwashed multitudes. To doubt or question the leaders, politicians, aristocrats, or well-placed businessmen in power was a crime punishable by death. "Mariam," my uncle whispered, pulling me from my thoughts, "you have the power. I implore you, bring him back." "I arranged to have him brought down from the cross early so that we could try to revive him," he said confidently. "It usually takes a man 2 full days to die by crucifixion, and only in rare cases does a man die on the cross on the same day, and then only from dehydration on an extremely hot day. Therefore I fed him a powerful sleeping draught on a sponge when he had thirsted. Instantly he seemingly died, and under the guise of needing to prepare him for burial before sundown, I called for him to be brought down, believing that we might have a chance of reviving him." My heart skipped a beat as he spoke. I stared at my blood-stained hands, asking grimly, "Is it appropriate for me to bring him back from the kingdom, that which the Lord has taken from us?" "Mariam, you have forgotten how Jesu returned Lazarus. He did not consider it wrong or inappropriate. In fact, he did not hesitate for a moment to try to save him, even though Lazarus had passed over days before. Remember? Listen, child, the baby stirring in your womb needs a father. You need a husband, and the world needs their king to rise and fulfill prophecy," he said, suddenly animated, with an air of anticipation in his voice. The problem was that I doubted whether I could do it. I thought of my mother and my father and wondered if their spirits were with me here now, watching over me, and what would they say? I had always liked to imagine my mother offering me advice since she had died giving birth to me, while I, never having known a mother, felt that I had a relationship with her which was forged in the spirit. I thought about it, unsure of how to explain the impossibility of what my uncle was asking me. It would take enormous courage and faith to undertake such a feat, and to be honest, I wasn't sure if I had either left in me. I was a beaten down, worn woman, pregnant, My thoughts reeled as I gazed lovingly at the stony rigidity of my poor husband's body, and I let out a low moaning cry, considering the import of my uncle's words. I can't do it. Mariam, you of all people should know that we cannot allow our fears to overtake us, especially at such a poignant moment as this. Jesus would want this. He was born to fulfill prophecy, and now he needs our help. Hurry! Move quickly before he crosses beyond the 9th wave. Sensing my inner struggle, he said, Do you wish for Jesus to die in a show of humiliation and failure, where the wagging tongues of local gossip vines shall forever speak of him as an impostor? He must rise, and he must show the world that he is our risen Messiah. The Lord can have him in due course. Now is not the time for his death. It is time for his resurrection, he said. His eyes were suddenly serious and determined. He was so faithful and confident. I had indeed seen Jesu return life to a dead body on more than one occasion, and now I wished more than anything to recall step by step what he had done to make the impossible possible. I struggled to find the right words, as they would have to be spoken with unflinching intention and belief. Yet grief and exhaustion had overwhelmed my ability to think straight. I wished my uncle would try. Can't you do it, uncle? I pleaded. Please. Child, you are his wife. None but you could be more qualified to call his spirit from a place that he spent a lifetime labouring to penetrate. My uncle's countenance was firm, and of course I knew he was right. It was me who Jesu loved above others, save God himself. My pleas and petitions would be the strongest reminder of our need for his company, for his unborn child, and more importantly, his true mission. He had lived and died for this moment. I could but try, for most surely it was better to try and fail than to not try at all. This might be my final chance of ever seeing him alive again. Sensing my thoughts, my uncle encouraged me. You have the gift, Mariam. Trust yourself. Use it. Heal him, he said. He seemed relieved that I was at least willing to try. The soldier who speared Jesu's side was never part of the plan, he added gravely. The plan? I asked. What do you mean, the plan? Forgive me, Mariam. I didn't want to give you hope, he said, suppressing the swelling of grief which I sensed clutching at his throat. Caiaphas must have paid that soldier a large sum to ensure his death. In his shrewd mind, he knew that we might try to revive him, and he wasn't taking any chances. The plan, what do you mean, the plan? I probed him, turning to meet his eyes. Yes, Mariam. You don't really suppose I was going to let them kill him, do you? God's blood! Your husband is the most important man walking the earth. Our entire faith and people rest on his survival. Antipas and Pilate are no friends of the honest priests. They did not want Jesu's blood on their hands, knowing full well his legal right to rule. His birth was predicted in the stars. The blood in his veins runs royal in every way, and he is our heir, our Messiah, and our King, both to the thrones of Herod and David. And that is what makes him the biggest threat to those in power, he said. It was Caiaphas, not the Romans, who wanted Jesu arrested and crucified right from the start. Luckily for us, Pilate never trusted Caiaphas, for we all know how much he secretly hated Rome. He looks down on anyone not born of a Jewish mother, he said indignantly, cracking his knuckles. So, Pilate and I struck a deal to have Jesu released early, and he willingly agreed, since King Herod the Great, God rest his soul, and the threat of his bloodline is something which no one anywhere fears. But Antipas's nephew was fearful Jesu might usurp the throne from him, and rightfully so, he said, clenching his teeth. Pilate knew Jesu was Prince Antipater's child. It was obvious to those who were privy to such understanding. Believe me, Pilate was extremely willing to make an arrangement, for all of Rome wishes to see Agrippa fall, he said matter-of-factly. And so we arranged for him to bear the cross for just a few hours to fulfill the hunger of Caiaphas and his retinue, feigning an execution. The plan was that we would rescue him before Shabbat and escape Judea. Rubbing his eyes sleepily, well, that was the plot, Mariam. But we hadn't counted on the soldier's spear, and now it will take more than just herbs and aloes to bring him back. It will take a miracle. If only that damn soldier hadn't stabbed him, for certain we could have saved him. Now it will be the will of God alone. So do not doubt yourself, Mariam, or your abilities. Remember who you are. My uncle had devised a plan which neither I nor my husband had known of, and now Jesu had not even the faintest hint of life within him. He lay limp as a tree which had been cut down at its root long before its time. Do it, Mariam, and don't ever doubt your power, he urged me.